Welcome to California Free Radio. I'm Kurt English. Scott Piotr is here on the screen, and Mike Netter is out on assignment tonight.
Not this guy over here. We're blocking him.
Who's that guy?
Rob Bonta, our favorite attorney general in the news.
Scott, let's talk about the streaming. You can go to @NetterMike to see our show. And Scott, what's your streaming?
At TaxFighter7, it's on the bottom of the screen. So those are both on X, @NetterMike and @TaxFighter7. Either one will work.
Good. All right. Well, there's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of problems to discuss, and incompetence in government in California and sadly throughout the world. So some of this may really shock you, what we're going to talk about tonight. So, Scott, tell us about our less than esteemed Attorney General, Ram Bonta.
So our esteemed Ram Bonta, I don't like the guy. I get his weekly newsletter. It's got so much thick political, at the very least, spin on what he does, and it's all going out at taxpayer dollars. I kind of call him our pretend attorney general because I don't think he's protecting the residents. I don't think he's the chief lawmaker. I think he's basically doing Newsom's bidding, and he files lawsuits against the Trump administration, and he brags about, I think he's up to like 40 different lawsuits against the Trump administration. And of course, he brags about the 2 or 3 that he's been victorious on. He doesn't brag about the 13 to 15 that he's already lost going against Trump, as though the state of California has some special right that overrides the executive branch of the United States. They are so full, both Newsom and Bonta, of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, that they cannot think straight. And I do not think that they're representing the people of California, certainly not all of us, but even those that voted for them, I think wanted them to manage and govern the state of California. And instead, they're fighting Trump every time he turns around because Trump's cutting all the, quote, free money that California has come to depend on because we're broke and borrowing money all the time. So Bonta is in the news because we found out that he has spent $500,000 on legal fees as attorney general out of his attorney general account. And so the first question that comes up is, wait a minute, what are you spending all this money on? I mean, you're not being indicted. Did you do something as the attorney general that we don't know about, that the FBI is investigating, that we need to know about? Inquisitive minds want to know. What do you think?
Well, what's those $4.8 million in legal fees for?
Well, not 4.8. It's just short of $500,000, 486,000. And so the conjecture is, because you haven't gotten any kind of confirmation from Bonta, is that there's an FBI probe that's been going on for a long time now in Oakland, where you have there's a family called the Duongs, and they are the ones that have the recycling contract and trash contract for the city of Oakland. And they were the ones that put the mayor there on, I'm going to throw up a picture of her. The mayor is Shen Tao, and the FBI raided her home last week or earlier this week. And I'm not sure what they took, but anything they wanted, really. And they're investigating her as part of the scandal. And Bonta accepted, at least what we know about, over $150,000 in campaign contributions from the Duong family. And he's evidently returned those campaign contributions about the same time that we find out he spent $500,000 on legal defense fees. So we're not sure. And, one of the things that that Mike Netter brought up, and as somebody who's run for office before, you can't take money from your attorney general campaign account. It's his attorney general, either it's his office holder account, or it's his attorney general account for his campaign for 2026. You can't use money out of that to defend yourself from something you did wrong as an assembly member, which is what he was when this Oakland thing went down. He wasn't the AG yet. He was just Assemblyman Bonta before his wife took over his seat in the assembly and he moved on to the attorney general. So, we need to know what is the money spent on? Why was it spent? Is it appropriate that it was spent out of this account? And what's he being charged of? What is he a person of interest in? He's out there filing lawsuits against Trump, and yet he's guilty of accepting dirty money from the Duongs. I mean, that's the conjecture that's out there. What's going on? We need to know. As the Democrats like to say, the allegations are severe enough that there's doubt that this guy can do his job properly as the chief law enforcement officer of the state of California. The seriousness of the charges. Isn't that what they always say on the liberal side?
Isn't that what Harry Reid used to say? Well, the seriousness of the charges means we have to investigate.
Yeah, it has nothing to do whether there's any validity to them. It's just the seriousness of it. So I'm going to play a clip here from Channel 3. Ashley, the reporter up there, has done a stellar job. She's the first one to really break this story. And so I'm going to crank up the volume and we're going to play this thing. And it's still going to be kind of weak as far as volume, but here we go. We bring her on. And we'll get rid of the mayor. We don't need the mayor. All right, let's try this.
He has spent nearly $500,000 of his campaign funds on legal help. KCRA 3 political director Ashley Zavala is the first to report this story, and she joins us now with exactly what's going on here.
Golston, tonight we're learning Rob Bonta has spent a lot of his own campaign cash on legal help amid a federal bribery investigation. His campaign is saying that the money is to help with that investigation, but this is the first time we're hearing about this now 10 months after that investigation started. 2 days before announcing he would not run for California governor and seek re-election for attorney general. This was in February. Campaign finance records show he made 5 payments to a private law firm totaling $468,000. That law firm, Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati, has a wide range of services, including legal help with government investigations and white-collar crime. Bonta's campaign confirmed the payments were for legal help with the ongoing federal bribery investigation that's happening in the East Bay. That's the investigation in which Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao, the ex-mayor there, and a family full of business people known as the Dongs were indicted earlier this year. In a statement, his campaign's senior advisor, Dan Newman, said, "There are, of course, ongoing legal proceedings in the East Bay in which several people were charged with serious crimes."
So I know that's really hard to hear, so I don't want to go on too much longer on that video. But she goes on to say, clearly what's going on is there is a connection to this whole thing that's going on in Oakland and the Dong family and the mayor who is indicted, no longer in the mayor's office, who they did the raid on. I don't know if she's actually been indicted, so that may be wrong. But there's a huge scandal going on in Oakland, and it looks like Bonta was in the middle of it. And that's why he spent $500,000 in legal fees and returned some $150,000 of campaign cash that he received from them. And the irony, of course, is that if he's sitting there with having spent that money from his AG account for something that he did while he was in the assembly, that's illegal for from the FPPC standpoint. That's the Fair Political Practices Coalition or whatever it is, commission. So we inquiring minds want to know. We want to know, what did he know, when did he know it, and what's he going to do about it? It seems to me that he should get his day in court, but we need to know. And if he's got an issue, a political or a legal issue, he should step aside as the AG in order to address that. Hold on a second, Kurt. Okay, now go. I had your volume off.
One of our viewers, William, wants to know how much Bonda has spent on hairspray.
Yeah. Or how about dental? He's got this fake smile that just drives me crazy. I don't think it's as much as Newsom has spent on his oil changes, though.
It's sort of hard to say. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But the fact that he's not running for governor tells you he wants less scrutiny, not more.
That would make sense to me.
So, Scott, you might have heard about another scandal. There were some members of the House and Senate that got and did a so-called public service announcement saying that it's okay if you're in the military to follow an unlawful order from the commander-in-chief. And that's about like telling Johnny not to put beans in his nose, right? And so a lot of Republicans are criticizing those Democrats, saying that they're trying to incite insurrection inside the military by instructing or goading military members that might not like Trump or might be unhappy to disobey orders. And I'd like to remind the Democrats that 18 United States Code 2387 says that the crime of sedition covers knowingly, quote, urging, advising, counseling members of the armed forces to disobey lawful orders. So it's sort of an interesting question. The Democrats are going to say, well, we were just indicating that they should not follow unlawful orders. Okay, Democrats shouldn't steal. What if we had a public service announcement now, Democrats, it's illegal to steal? Would that be okay, Scott?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, sure, that'd be the same. But it's interesting. Is it sedition when you're trying to goad someone? Is it being an accessory to a crime to call all Republicans Nazis and say that they're a danger to the future, and so some nut job tries to shoot somebody? Where does the line get crossed between free speech and incitement and being an accessory to crime? And this public service ad raises those questions. What's the line? What do you think, Scott?
Well, I agree with you. I think that, there's a legal line, right? Because we don't want to sit there and actually take away their free speech. But if their free speech induces a riot, they should be held responsible for the riot. If it induces somebody to come out and take a shot at Charlie Kirk or President Trump, they should be held accountable for their language. And they're not being held accountable because we don't have an accountable press. We don't have a legitimate fourth branch of government because they are clearly Democrats and propaganders rather than true media giving us the truth.
Scott, let's apply that to California. When you watch local news in Southern California, where you are, do you see good news? Do you see balance? Do you see good coverage? Or do you see a bunch of liberal bias?
Well, there's no question the mainstream media or the legacy media, because I think it's on its way out.
Well, I'm talking about local California news that you can see on your local stations. Biased, liberally, or fair?
No, biased, liberal by a lot.
Yeah, not just by a little, by a lot.
Yes, no question about it.
So in the Rob Bonta case, I mean, you played that clip of a Sacramento TV station doing a decent job of describing the controversy and the problem. But that's more the exception than the rule in California, wouldn't you say?
Clearly, Ashley Zavara is putting herself out on a limb and she's been a good conservative reporter from what I understand, and so she's done a stellar job of pointing this thing out. It's surprising that Sacramento, her station, is actually giving her airtime for this, because typically it just gets buried, it gets swept under the rug. You watch this; this will be a little bit of a story for a little while, and people like Ashley Savara has done a great job of bringing it out to the forefront, and then it'll be buried. So other people have had to address it because she's addressed it, but already I've seen people, other news sources sitting there saying, well, that may be the case with Rob and Mr. Bonta, and we'll have to see how that goes. But what about Trump when he does, whatever, where, the
Well, that's
Epstein
all the
file?
liberal media does. They turn it right back to Trump's fault, like the lady in Congress who was just indicted for some scandal with her family taking money wrongfully. And she says, well, it's because I'm black. And by the way, Trump did blah, blah, blah. Completely failing to talk about the reason that she was indicted.
Yeah, exactly. And so this Democrat commercial, the Democrat Party's running it. They need to take responsibility. I mean, at what point does sedition and the Insurrection Act come into play? I mean, to me, they are actually going out and telling the military to defy orders. I have the commercial if you want to try playing it. I don't know how the volume is going to do. Want to give it a shot?
Well, it's just propaganda, and look at the Democrat, as Rush Limbaugh used to say, the Democrat crime family. You've got Arctic, what was that thing? Arctic Frost, where they were investigating Republicans wrongfully. They took senators' phone records. I mean, it's outrageous what went on in the Biden administration.
Yeah, that was
They
the Biden DOJ and the FBI, Operation Arctic Frost.
Yep. Well, and you were talking about media in California. I'll tell you another horrible California media outlet is Spectrum News. Have you ever seen the local Spectrum News? Like if you happen to have Spectrum as your cable provider, and if you like to see the Dodgers or the Lakers, they're on Spectrum, so you got to have Spectrum. And it's just a bunch of left-wing propaganda, and it's Channel One. So in Spectrum, they default to that. So you have to set your default to some other station if you don't want to see it.
You don't want to even happen to punch through it as you turn on your TV set.
No, because it'll make you angry with some liberal propaganda as soon as your TV goes on.
They really can't help themselves. I have a couple liberal friends, not many, and they sit there and go, I explain some of these biases, and they sit there and go, what do you mean? I mean, they don't think it's biased. That's all they get.
Well,
That's
the
their
problem
news.
is because of the poor job of propaganda in K through 12 in colleges, and we'll have an article about that a little later, how the University of San Diego did a study, UC San Diego, I'm sorry, and said that California students are woefully unprepared for college. And that's an indictment of K through 12. We have another story about the elementary school in Encinitas that was focused on homosexual propaganda in elementary school instead of teaching the 3 R's. You see what the emphasis of liberals is. They want to undermine our country. They want to undermine the Constitution. They want to undermine traditional values, the family. They hate Jews and Christians and anything that comes out of the Bible. So there is an attempt to poison the minds of students beginning in kindergarten. And as I've said on the show before, Scott, get your kids out of public school. Parents and grandparents, get your children and grandchildren out of public school. They're just indoctrination centers. And that's why I don't support funding public education anymore, which also brings us to an important initiative, Scott, the CEO initiative, that is just about to be circulating petitions to get on the ballot next year for school choice. What do you think of that?
I think it's, we've tried to get these things on the ballot before. It actually was on the ballot back in the 90s for school choice. The whole concept of the money ought to follow the child. The child shouldn't follow the money, and what that would do is it would create competition so that even the public school system where they have school choice, has gotten better because they realize they can't just, if they're going to have any students whatsoever, they've got to do something to improve their product. And so even though they have twice the amount of money or 3 times as much money as a private school, they're still underperforming and not they're really, like you say, they're not teaching, they're indoctrinating. The colleges are already that way. You cannot send your child to school and get an education. He will or she will be indoctrinated.
Well, Scott, recently on our show, we talked about the University of California having a test. And boy, if you're a Christian or a person of traditional values and you don't believe the LGBTQ ABC propaganda, you don't pass the test and you can't enroll in your classes. And they wanted you to use some pretend person's pronoun who wants to pretend that they're a woman or a they or an it or a whatever, right?
Right, and that's unacceptable. That's hate speech if you don't call them by their preferred pronoun.
No, I'm sorry. The emperor's new clothes. I'm not going to say the emperor is wearing clothes when the emperor is naked. No. In fact, that was the whole point of that fairy tale. Tell the truth. Trust your own eyes and tell the truth. And that's the problem. We have so many people that are afraid to tell the truth. Look at comedians. They said they were afraid to go to college campuses during the heart of the woke Biden administration because no one would laugh at jokes because they were afraid someone would get offended seeing somebody laugh. I mean, that's insanity.
Well, of course, they cannot stand competition of ideas. That's why they shot Charlie Kirk, because Charlie Kirk was bringing discussion of the issues to college campuses, and they can't have that. They've got to have only their side presented, or else they lose the argument.
Well, William again makes another good point. Who's a viewer? He says that in LA that they're just running sob stories about illegal aliens. People in our country illegally. I have zero sympathy for anybody in this country illegally. If you're here, get out. And if you're ICE, get them out. And now I guess this communist Mondami is going to meet with Trump tomorrow, and allegedly he's going to tell Trump that once he takes office, that the federal government's not allowed to deport any illegal aliens. So I guess the commie from another country doesn't understand our Constitution well enough to understand that federal government has primary authority in immigration, and they'll do what they want.
He also, if he does that, doesn't understand Trump. Trump won't back down. He'll double down. He'll triple down. He'll send more ICE raids in there and just dare Mondani to do something. And I got to tell you, NYPD, a lot of police departments in these sanctuary cities and states are not assisting ICE. Okay, I get it. But when ICE gives out officer in distress type calls, generally speaking, every cop, doesn't matter what badge they're wearing, they go help. They drop what they're doing and they go help. But it sounds like he's going to have the NYPD stand down. So if Antifa, et cetera, start to riot and go against ICE and NYPD doesn't respond to help, what's going to happen? You're going to get
Scott,
ICE.
in the old days, we used to shoot looters and rioters. We didn't put up with it.
Yeah, the heck with the rubber bullets. They're dead.
Yeah. Now, if you're going to riot against law enforcement officers keeping illegal alien criminals out, that's an insurrection. There's your insurrection, Scott.
Yeah,
and those people need to be treated as enemy combatants. And if they're U.S. citizens, they need to be put in jail for life.
And if
they don't like it, then let's really have an argument. Let's debate that.
Yeah, and if they don't back down, if they start throwing frozen water bottles or lit Molotov cocktails, they're going to get shot. They should get shot. There's no way that I think one ICE officer ought to go out in a box. The rioters can go out in as many boxes as they want. I don't care.
And the illegal aliens. If you're here illegally, I'm very unconcerned about you. Get out. Get out while you can.
And nor do I think that an illegal alien gets the same due process as an American citizen, unlike what the Democratic Party believes. They believe that illegal alien has every single right under the Constitution that we as Americans have. Not true. I don't care what they say. And the Democrats are wrong on that, and they're trying to plead on the heartstrings of the liberals that are out there. And it's like, oh, you got to have due process. The due process for an illegal alien is show me your proof of residency or your legal status. Oops, you don't have it. Bye. That's the due process.
Well, Scott, there's a whole lot of outrageous things in California that we should talk about here to enrage our audience. Santa Ana College published a Spanish language catalog. And I'm thinking, are we in the United States? Are we in Spain? Are we in Mexico? What country are we in? And oh, by the way, Scott, if you go to Mexico, are there going to be bilingual signs and bilingual ballots? No. Bilingual government documents? No, there will not be.
Do you remember Prop 187 here in California in the 90s?
Yes, I voted for
it. Explain to our audience what that was for those that weren't here.
Scott, I'm going to let you do the honors.
You let me do the honors. I'll paraphrase. Basically, it declared English as the official language of government and prohibited the government from printing or doing anything in any other language but English.
Okay, so what happened once that passed?
Well, that's more your area of expertise, but basically the court shot it down, and the Attorney General and the California government
and the Gray Davis administration refused to appeal it, so we lost.
I was going to say, they did not give it a very ardent defense because they didn't believe in it. So once one judge shut it down, it basically shut down. And when the proponents of the initiative wanted to take over the defense of it, the court said no. So,
all right, Scott, we have a lot to get to because as a reminder to our audience, next Thursday is Thanksgiving. It's the day that we give thanks to God for our country. And sadly, Scott, there are a few people that say they're not celebrating Thanksgiving because they don't like our country. Well, I have an invitation for them. Go find a country you like better and get out.
Yeah, they did a survey. Did you read that? They did a survey of mostly younger people, 44 and under. And they asked them, have they ever considered moving out of the country?
Well, it's younger women.
And by a large margin, the college indoctrinated young women were the highest percentage that said they'd considered moving out of the country.
Great. You don't like this country? Get out. We don't want you here. Great
that
idea.
Was
don't let the guy, but be sure you renounce your citizenship when you leave.
The author of the article suggested the same conclusion. And so tell me, what country do you think was most often cited?
North Korea, Cuba, Iran, Russia, China. They might be happy.
No, if they want to leave the country, what country is the highest percentage chosen for? Which country would they leave America for?
You tell me.
Canada. About 44% would go to Canada.
Crazy liberal place now. Magdalena wants to remind us that our show is being repeated on KPSF radio, twitter.com/musicamaria. Thank you, Magdalena. So, Scott, speaking of immigrants we don't want in our country, there was an Iranian refugee that was online saying that she wanted to burn America, spelled with a KKK, down to the ground. So here we let this nut job lady in as a refugee from Iran, probably someplace where they would make her wear a burqa and whip her if she didn't follow Islamic law. And she apparently hates her new country just as much as she must have hated her old country. I think we need to kick every immigrant out of this country that doesn't like this country. In the old days, immigrants would assimilate. If you don't want to assimilate, don't come here and don't stay here because we don't want you. We don't want you.
Right.
We don't want to be your neighbors. We don't want to put up with your anti-American nonsense. We don't just go home. Go someplace else.
And the best way to make sure that people assimilate is you don't allow them to all go into one area of town. Like little Mogadishu or little Somalia up in Minnesota.
Oh, but
And
that mayor lost, that nut job that was running for mayor. I forget
well,
his name.
wait a second. The list of Democrat nut jobs for mayor is
No,
a
this
long
was the
list.
Somali nut job that was running for mayor of Minneapolis, and he lost.
Ah, okay. Running for so he didn't take the Mondami route and lie. He
No,
actually said,
he lost because they realized he was crazy, and the New Yorkers didn't. Well, you know, back to New York and the commie coming in Florida, they give policemen a bonus to move down there because then they don't have to spend the money on the training, you know, the police academy.
"Oh, you mean they're poaching all the NYPD officers that want to
Well,
get
and
out?"
from a lot of blue states where they're disrespecting police officers. If you're a police officer or a family of a police officer, thank you for what you do. And if you're a family member of a police officer, thank you for putting up with the disrespect and the evil directed toward law enforcement. I would not do that job, Scott. I would let riders burn down people's cities rather than defend people that wouldn't defend me as a policeman. Why should I care?
I know. When I was on the council in Newport Beach. That was I mean, Newport Beach police don't exactly have a lot of the same issues that they're dealing with, like
Oh,
LAPD.
Scott, they'd ride down at the beach. So if a bikini got robbed, they'd be right on the crime.
So, but with COVID and BLM and all the other crap that's been going on, it was brought home to us really quick. Yeah, I didn't want any of those officers not going home to their families at night because they stood up between us and a rioter, and they gave too much preference or deference to the rioter. Forget it. I'd rather go out and defend a cop to the max for maybe using a little bit too early or too much force in the Democrats' eyes, not in my eyes, to make sure that he goes home to his family at night. I, you know, I
Well, and
like
as you know, not every member of law enforcement goes home always. In
no, and
your city
I
of Newport Beach, Bob Henry came out one night a very long time ago for some guy who was threatening to commit suicide in a dirt lot that's now called Bob Henry Park, and he killed the officer who was trying to help him before he committed suicide. And
yes.
that guy, Bob Henry, had three young children at the time.
So, when they sit there and talk about the thin blue line, there is a very thin blue line that protects us from the evil that's out there on the streets. And these Democrats who want to sit there and get rid of the police force, and they think that the police are the problem, not the criminals, they should be the ones that should be the victims of these criminals. And then see what it's like. Let's put them out in front. Let them be the thin blue line.
Oh, well, the guy in New York, Mondami, the mayor, he wants to send social workers out instead of policemen to some domestic violence things. And a policeman will tell you, Scott, that domestic violence calls are some of the most dangerous calls
Right, because you
because
you
the
want
heat
to
of passion.
you want to get in there, you want to help them out, and all of a sudden you're stepping in between two people who are really trying to get things resolved one way or the other, and somebody pulls a weapon, and the cop generally is in, I'm going to say, counseling mode, and may not be as quick, or may put himself in a situation where he can't react enough to protect himself quick enough. So
Yeah, but
yes, my
I know of policemen
to our
leaving.
officers that are
I
out
know of
there.
policemen leaving New York and Chicago and those places, going to Florida, going to Honolulu. That wouldn't be a bad gig, right? Going to Honolulu.
Or any place in Florida. Come on, really.
Yeah.
So, do you know who the biggest funder of the Somalian terrorists are?
Soros.
Minnesota taxpayers.
Really?
So, what's happened is the legislators started a fund to help those that are disadvantaged. And it was supposed to be, $2.6 million a year or something like that. It's now ballooned to over $100 million. First 4 months of this year, it was $61 million. And what they're finding is that it's rife with fraud.
Yeah, how come
And
the feds haven't shut that down?
And the perpetrators, well, it's Minnesota's money. I guess they can burn it if
No,
they want.
a state or a city cannot fund terrorism.
So
That's a federal thing.
what's going on is the Somalians are perpetrating fraud. Oh, my kid's autistic, and surprise, surprise, you have 3 times the number of autistic kids in the little Somalia, than you do in the rest of the state. And they get more money with the more severe the trauma, autism, what is, and they sit there and say, well, we want to be culturally sensitive. So they have Somalian doctors, they have Somalian psychologists, they have Somalian social workers, and the gringos don't know what's going on. And so literally what they're doing is they pay, meaning the Somalian, I'll call them warlords, pay these residents in the United States who are not assimilating to the United States. They are little Somalia and they don't care. They give them a bounty for all the dollars that they're able to collect from the state. And then literally they're taking this money, they're putting it in a suitcase, they're getting on an airplane, flying to Somalia and handing it over to the warlord. And so, the taxpayers are funding these terrorists, but obviously not directly. And the ones that are really guilty of it are the Somalians, but no one's got the gonads to go and arrest these people because they think it would be culturally insensitive.
Well, the solution is to denaturalize every one of them and ship them back to Somalia, which they have the right to do under federal law.
I think they should. I mean,
just put up with all the blowback. Fine, we don't want these people in our country.
One of the arguments, remember we talked about 187, English is the official language. Every citizen, you have to be a citizen to vote. Every citizen has to pass a marginal English proficiency test. It's not a high hurdle, but they have to understand some English in order to become a citizen. And so the thought is that if you have somebody and they don't bother to learn English, they shouldn't become citizens, right?
Well, Scott, like the commercial truck drivers, some of which were licensed in California, and the feds have just demanded that the states rescind 17,000 commercial driver's licenses from illiterate people who could not speak English, who were not citizens.
That's in California. They were just doing raids, I read, in Texas, where they've taken 2/3 of the truckers that are on the roads that they stopped were illegal aliens. 2/3. Texas is right on the border. So anybody that's coming across the border, that's going to be the first place they try and get a job.
So, Scott, to our listeners and viewers, if you see a commercial truck on the road, change lanes, because it may be somebody who doesn't know English who could run you over.
And literally those 80,000-pound trucks do a little damage to the minivans that are out there.
So, Scott, let's get back to California. The Democrats are engaging in a lot of homosexual and gender propaganda, but we have a victory to report. Wait a minute.
Let me write this down. Victory. Okay. What did we win?
In the Encinitas School District, which is in San Diego County in California.
Okay.
The parents won a court case forcing against a 5th grade teacher in the district who was trying to teach transgenderism to kindergartners, to 5-year-olds. You don't sexualize children. We call people like that child molesters,
pedophiles,
child abusers.
We'll send them to Epstein Island.
Yes, but the liberal school district dropped their appeal after losing because there was so much bad publicity because they look like the child molesters that they are.
So what's the penalty?
I don't know what the underlying court case was. They dropped the news story this week was they dropped their appeal.
Yeah, but so we won. What did we win?
Well, they stopped teaching transgenderism to kindergartners.
Yeah, that's why we get them out of the public schools. We don't have to worry about it.
Get your kids out of public schools. So in Los Angeles City Schools, where I am a proud graduate, for those of you in Los Angeles, Tulsa Elementary, Rinaldi Elementary in Granada Hills, Portola Junior High in Tarzana, and Taft High School in Woodland Hills. Los Angeles Unified School District. They have an elementary school sex education program, Scott, that includes sex assigned at birth, gender, sexual identity, gender expression, and transgender. as part of an elementary school curriculum. Why are they sexualizing children, those child molesters? Yep, I said it, child molesters.
Well, the answer to that is that they're recruiting them.
Yep. They should all go to jail for that, in my view, every one of them.
Like I
So
said,
we
we got to convert Epstein Island into a prison for
island.
pedophiles.
So
Fill it up.
Every year there was teacher training now required in California by the California Department of Education for LGBTQ propaganda. And so if you're a teacher that doesn't believe in that, they wouldn't certify you if you didn't go along with their charade. And fortunately, a judge ordered them to stop that training.
The training. I'm sure Bonta is appealing that.
Well, unless he's just running for re-election or trying to sabotage him.
Let me ask you a personal question. You're at let's say a political event, and you meet obviously a man dressed like a woman, transvestite, and he wants to be referred to as a she. She introduces herself with her female name.
I mean, he does, because he's still a man. And remember, Scott, it's in your DNA when you're conceived. You either get two X's and you're a woman, or you get an X and a Y and you're a man. And however you dress or however you pretend, whatever you call yourself, you're still a man if you were born a man. That's it.
Okay, so he says his name is whatever. I'm going to pick a name, Karen, because Karen's a good name for people that are
for
nosy.
Someone who's obnoxious. Yes, in the culture it's become now.
So this guy introduces himself as Karen and says, "Refer to me as she." What's your response? Do you refer to him as she?
I'm sorry. I will not say the emperor is closed when the emperor is naked. I will not go along with your game of pretend and you can't make me.
Will you call him by Karen or make up another name?
I will walk away because I don't deal with mentally ill people. They belong in mental institutions. And if you are a man pretending to be a woman, you're nuts and you should be in a mental institution. Period.
Receiving counseling from somebody besides a Democrat.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, if someone came up and said, I want to be called Georgia instead of George, you could choose your own name. I don't necessarily have a problem calling him by the name, but I will not refer to him as a she.
Well, here's the deal, Scott. If they say everyone can name their own pronouns, I want to demand these liberals call me your Royal Highness, because you have to call me by my pronouns by your rule, liberals. I'm your Royal Highness.
Well,
And Scott, you could be your Magnificence. They have to call you your Magnificence.
I like the way you think. See, that would be very.
This is so asinine. We live in an era of crazy people, and it's just a joke. It's not. You can't even take them seriously. They're so.
I want you to. If somebody comes up and says, "I want you to call me by my pronouns, he, they, or whatever," and I say, "Okay, but you have to refer to me by my pronoun, and it'll be your Magnificence." And
that would be such an absurd conversation. How could you keep from laughing at the idiot?
And oh, by the way, I respect the English language too much to refer to you by an inaccurate pronoun. If you want me to call you your, governorship, I'm happy to do that, but I will not call you she when you're obviously a he.
Right. So changing gears from one ridiculous thing to another. Scott, do you have any updates on the Proposition 50 lawsuits?
I got a little bit of an update. Obviously our in the field exec partner, Mike Netter, he's actually a plaintiff in the Prop 50 lawsuit. And so the Prop 50 lawsuit, contrary to what a lot of other people are saying, at least the one that he's involved with, his lawsuit is the one that the DOJ has now enjoined, right? So Harmeet Dillon and the DOJ are enjoining and becoming part of the lawsuit that Mike Netter is part of. and their accusation is that the districts written and presented and approved by Prop 50 were drawn on the basis of race. Now, if you've been
The
following,
person who draw them admitted it, Scott. He's admitted it.
right, and really, even if you just draw one district by race and you redraw that one district, that's going to affect the other 51 districts in the state in some form or fashion. And I don't see how you could do anything but throw it out.
But
As
Scott,
a-
a liberal Democrat appointed judge in Texas is attempting to throw out the Texas redistricting, claiming it was done by race, which is false because it was done in reaction to a judge's order that what they
Yeah.
had done before was unconstitutional.
So, if you only listen to liberal talk shows, podcasts, whatever, you would think that what the state of Texas is doing is they're redistricting mid-decade just to take advantage of the fact that they have the votes to put a very partisan redistricting plan in
You
place.
mean like California just tried to do with Proposition 50, like that, Scott?
like they just did with 50. So
Right, okay.
the Supreme Court has ruled that you can be partisan when you draw these districts, but you cannot draw them based on race. And so what Texas is doing is their districts, it's a great story. Their districts were drawn based on race. And then the race baiters filed a lawsuit saying they weren't based on race enough. We want more brown and black districts. And so they took it to court. And not only did the court, all the way up to the Supreme Court, not side with the race baiters and instead sided with the Attorney General, they flipped it over the other way and said, wait a minute, you drew these districts based on race. And yes, they had several districts that they drew on purpose, very gerrymandered, to get more brown and black representatives. And they use that as their defense against not having to make worse districts. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. It's obvious that of the 40 or so districts that they have in Texas, they had like 21 minorities representing these 40 some odd districts. So clearly there's no racial prejudice. The minorities that represent Texans in Congress, there's more minorities representing them in Congress than are proportionate in the population. So they're overrepresented minorities already before those maps went into effect. So why do you have to draw 3 or 4 race-baited, race-oriented brown and black districts when you already have achieved racial parity or even better
Well,
than parity?
Scott, bringing it back to California, I think that the Texas will win and this judge will be overturned, and that Prop 50 will also be overturned if necessary at the Supreme Court level. So
Well,
I think Mike's going to be a winner.
At the very least, it needs to be put into limbo so that it does not take effect in 2026.
All right, Scott, let's talk about another scam in California, the homeless scam. On our program over the last year and a half, we've talked about the disappeared $24 billion for homeless programs. And
That's before the
that
homeless
they cannot
burned
account
down
for
South Bay.
$1 of that $24 billion. So there's another problem. Now there's a scandal about where your taxes really go to help the homeless people in California. And it's just another money laundering scheme is what it turns out to be.
Just another.
Just another.
So these in other words,
Scott,
basically the government money is going to NGOs, non-government operations,
yeah,
that are all
nonprofits, right?
that are all buddies of Newsom's, and then they're making Democratic campaign contributions from those proceeds, along with
Even though that's illegal, yes, after it's laundered.
along with going to the bank, depositing their millions of dollars, and not doing anything about homelessness.
Well, there's a mayor's race coming up in Los Angeles, Scott. Are you aware of that?
Oh yeah, Karen Bass is being challenged from the left, I hear.
Well, she's a communist. How can you challenge her from the left, Scott?
Mondami challenged Eric Adams from the left.
Eric Adams was a former policeman. He wasn't a communist. He was just stupid.
But he was ultra liberal, way left wing. and Cuomo wasn't much better.
Well, Cuomo's just a typical Democrat,
So
skirt
so
chaser.
Karen Bass is a Marxist, but the city councilwoman that's challenging her from the left is not even she's unabashed Marxist. She wants to take over the means of production like Mondami does. At least Karen Bass stopped short of that. Karen Bass just burned down neighborhoods so that she could take them and put homeless people in low
Well,
income
so
housing.
maybe Scott, somebody who's kind of an opportunist like Rick Caruso, former USC chairman of the board, who's a multi-billionaire in real estate in Southern California. Maybe there's an opportunity for someone like that to get elected if that one communist splits the vote of another communist.
So Rick Caruso was in the Palisades, or I'm sorry, had businesses and homes in the Palisades, hired his own fire department, in effect, his own firefighters.
And now Democrats have proposed legislation to block you from having your own private fire protection in your home.
So he successfully protected his properties, and now the Democrats in Sacramento are saying, no, you can't do that. You got to let them burn.
So,
It's
Scott,
like-
all of our listeners know how high California's gasoline prices are, the highest in the nation. But it's interesting that the Chevron stations are fighting back a little bit. Maybe you've got that graphic that's on the back of some pumps at Chevron stations.
Yeah,
Is that something you could drop on the screen?
my background here. Hold on.
It reminds Californians that we have the highest gas taxes and fees in California and the whole United States.
Which we do. We have the highest gas prices. We're almost double what Arizona is, and our taxes are the highest in the nation on gas, on a gallon of gasoline. Our utility bills, which are related to that because they use fossil fuels to make electricity, are literally 5 times higher in California than they are in neighboring Arizona. Our electric bills.
Well, and they've just raised rates again, and it's just part of the out of control spiral of the costs in California. So, Scott, from one fraud, we talked about homeless fraud. There is so much massive food stamp fraud that the USDA has said that everyone on food stamps, it's called SNAP now. They didn't want to call it food stamps. I guess they wanted a euphemism. Has to reapply. Imagine, Scott, a government program with so much fraud they had to start over.
I think it's a great idea, though. They start over, and that enables them to kind of review things as they go, and the fraudsters have to come up with new fraud ways to try and beat the system, which they'll surely try.
Maybe there won't be as many dead people getting food stamps, Scott.
What a novel concept. That diet of dying first is, a killer way to lose weight, huh?
So another problem we have in California, as you know, Scott, is we get a lot of water from the Colorado River in California. And
Yes.
the Colorado River, there is some negotiations going on. And the question is, what will California's allocation be of that water? And how will that affect the supply of Californian water? Now, Scott, in my view, it is the job of government to make sure you and I have as much water, electricity, and gas as we want. It's not their place to tell us to cut back. It's their place to provide it. And if they can't provide sufficient water, electricity, and gas, they should all be fired in disgrace. Or maybe put in jail, but at least fired in disgrace.
Yeah.
So is there a risk that California's allocation of Colorado River water will be reduced?
Well, the old saying, water is for drinking or whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. Fighting over water rights is as old as the country is. So I imagine, first of all, California is taking more than its fair share out of the Colorado River. We have a certain amount of, lineal foot of, border that goes along the Colorado River, and that's shared with Arizona. Arizona then shares more of that with Nevada, and yet Arizona gets 10%. I'm probably getting the numbers wrong, but a minuscule part of the Colorado River compared to what California gets.
Well, isn't part of that related to the population difference?
Well, the argument is that it's a property right. It's not a number of people right.
Well, if I'm Arizona, why would I not just go farther north to the Nevada border and just empty the whole thing out there and call it a day? Sorry, guys, there's no water left when we get down to your border.
That's what water wars do. When they're out on the range and they're dealing with ranches and, hey, my cattle, water's here. All of a sudden, the guy just dams it up above and creates a nice little lake and lets it dribble out another direction, and that guy has got no water anymore. So there are rules against that for that exact reason.
All right. Well, Scott, our least favorite governor, Newsom.
Wait a second. I want to hit something else on water.
Okay.
You see the picture on the burning fire hydrant.
Yeah.
That is an actual picture from the Palisades. No water. The fire hydrant itself was burning. I don't know.
Scott, let's remind our audience why that was. Because the DEI hire at the Department of Water and Power did not refill the reservoir at the top of the hill of the Palisades, which by gravity would fill all of the fire hydrants with water.
Right. So they had a 1 million gallon reservoir, bigger than 1 million gallon reservoir that had a cover on it, like they all do, in order to keep impurities out of our drinking water, and it had a tear in it, and they had a price to repair it of about $140,000. That thing had been empty for almost a year, and nothing had been done about the cover. And the head of DWP, Department of Water and Power,
who was a DEI hire making $750,000 a year, nearly double what her predecessor made.
So rather than get fired, get this, she just won an award for one of the distinguished women in the country.
That's outrageous.
I'm kind of like
just liberals giving other liberals awards to try to promote their political career, irrespective of competence, quality, or achievement.
I say her distinguishing characters, or her distinguishing mark is empty fire hydrants on fire because of her incompetence.
Yeah, but Scott, if I was one of those Palisades homeowners, I'd be suing her personally, along with Karen Bass and the 3 fire Karens in LA Fire Department. They were all incompetent.
$140,000 rip in that cover is peanuts compared to what was lost in the fire, and
compared to her outrageous salary.
And people would argue that the likelihood of that extra 1 million gallons being able to stop this fire, it probably wouldn't have stopped it. On the other hand, it might have saved a lot of houses. It might have saved lives.
Well, it might have also saved it when the homeless guy set the fire on January 1st, if they'd put the whole fire out so it didn't rekindle with the winds on a few days later.
So the story, and that's an unfolding saga, is that LA Fire Department had put out a brush fire, and it was still smoldering. They were monitoring, which is a typical scenario. They because it's hard to put enough water on it to put it all out, right? So they have somebody watching it 24/7 to make sure it doesn't get out of control, and they put out flare-ups and stuff like that until eventually it dies out. And with the winds that they knew predicted to be there that weekend were going to be coming up, instead of being directed to put the fire out until it's dead, they were directed off the site. Go ahead and leave. And they handed out the responsibility of watching the fire to Cal Fire, and Cal Fire didn't watch it. And so their incompetence, when the winds came up, that still smoldering fire is a significant part of what started the Palisades fire.
Well, in Scott and Palisades, less than 10% of the homeowners have received a permit to rebuild 10 months later. And in Malibu, only 4 permits have been issued 10 months later. These are liberals in government that want to prevent these people from rebuilding so they can stack it with low income housing.
So I would say their number of 10% is overestimating, because
I said less than 10%, less than 10%.
so, we worked on a project there, and you pull a permit for the demo, then you pull a permit for a temporary electric meter so you can start rebuilding. Then you pull a permit. There are so many permits that you pull that are not the official building permit to rebuild. My guess is that of this less than 10% of applications that have been approved, that less than 1% are the actual building permits to rebuild a structure. Most of them are ancillary permits that get to the point of being able to pull one for your structure.
So Scott, speaking of incompetence, Gavin Newsom took office as governor of California with a surplus of over $13 billion and will leave with a deficit of over $46 billion. So he spent $60 billion wasted on illegal aliens and on money laundering. So, and if you're not in California, you do not want Gavin Newsom as your president in 2028 or ever, 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 ever.
You don't like Gavin?
No one likes Gavin. Oh, get that off my screen. Don't make me barf.
But he is kind of a fairy, isn't he?
He's a scam artist. Remember, he's such a scumbag that he was sleeping with his best friend and campaign manager's wife.
Yeah, he is. He is about as slimy as you can get.
So what people around the country was, if he'd screw him, he'll screw you too. Literally. So you heard about the Turning Point USA event at UC Berkeley, Scott?
Yes, where they had rioters.
Yes, where the Soros, I'm guessing, I can't, allegedly the Soros people paid people to come in there and disrupt, and then they started committing violence.
Allegedly.
But this can't be tolerated. If free speech and political rights mean anything, you can't have liberal goon squads going to conservative events and threatening violence and committing violence. That's not acceptable. That's a conspiracy to violate those people's civil rights, and those people all need to be jailed. And fortunately, the DOJ is looking into it.
Which sounds like well, I'm so glad we've got a DOJ that actually is trying to do actual justice.
Because Biden's DOJ was the Department of Injustice and Political Corruption.
Right.
So, Scott, we've heard about a number of Democrats being accused of mortgage fraud. Adam Schiff, the prosecutor in New York against Trump. But now Bay Area Congressman Eric Swalwell has been accused of mortgage fraud. It seems to be... I
thought he was about to announce for governor, too.
Well, a corrupt Democrat? Wow, maybe some Democrat voters will be anxious to vote for someone like that, Scott.
Well, it's a good question, yes. I love this.
And remember, Eric Swalwell was the guy sleeping with a Chinese spy who was trying to get, when he was on the Intelligence Committee of the House.
Yeah, sleeping with Bang Bang or Fang Fang or whatever her name was.
Yeah, whatever it was, who was also sleeping with other American politicians. So Scott, we criticize Democrats a lot, but I think we need to hold our own California Republican Party accountable. And I know Mike Netter wants to say more about that in the future. But the former state senator and chairman of the California Republican Party, Jim Brulte, had a pretty harsh critique, saying that the California Republican Party was making itself irrelevant. Scott, in the corporate world, if the people in charge do poorly or get poor results, they get fired. So given how poorly the California Republican Party has done, why haven't there been mass firings of the people in charge?
They know how to work the system, at least in their own party. We had Jessica Patterson, who was there for 2 terms. She was the first chairman to actually get paid. She got paid $250,000 a year, somewhere in that neighborhood. And she ran the party into the ground. She was a good fundraiser, paid her salary, paid her staff salary, but we lost ground. We lost people in the assembly. We lost state senators. We lost congressmen. She did a terrible job. So what did we do? We hired her lieutenant and made Corin Rankin the chairman of the Republican Party, who is the chairman today. And she made an utter fool of herself in the Prop 50 debacle. We had no really discernible campaign from the California Republican Party. They are awful. When I ran for assembly last year in 2024, I was in a district that was what was considered one of the districts that we needed to win in order to take back just the supermajority, not a majority, the supermajority
to eliminate the Democrat supermajority.
Eliminate the Democrat supermajority. And I didn't even get a phone call after I won. I mean, I had to call them and say, "What can you do for me?" "Oh, we have this data. Here's the login portal." It was worthless. It was easier for me to get data someplace else.
Yeah, so that's why I don't donate to the state party. I donate to candidates.
This picture that you've got up here on the screen, this was taken from Governor Newsom's X feed, his press office X feed, and he said, believe it or not, "Happy birthday, President Joe Biden. We miss having a president who has physical stamina and a functioning brain." It's kind of like,
well, Newsom can lie with a smile on his face.
No, there's nothing he says that comes out of his mouth that's not a lie.
Yeah, exactly. So Scott, speaking of incompetence and corruption, do you know what the CalPERS is, the California Public Employees Retirement System?
CalPERS, yes.
Well, you know, they pay state employees, right? Retired ones, like my mother, who is a retired teacher. California's retirement fund committed $282 million to a Chinese firm that was investigated for human rights abuses. Why are we investing our retirees' money?
Well, wait a minute. That's not the full story. They invested some $468 million in green new energy deals that have basically gone to zero value because Newsom pushed CalPERS to invest in his green energy crap. Had they invested that money in, Standard & Poor's 500 fund, just something vanilla, they would have like $3 billion in there now. But instead, they've got like $10 million left of the $426 million that they started with.
Well, I would argue that's a breach of fiduciary duty by the fiduciaries, and they should be prosecuted and sued.
The DOJ is supposedly looking at the details on that to see if any crimes have been violated, because he's not part of CalPERS. He should not be having influence over CalPERS.
So, Scott, would you take public transportation in San Francisco?
Yeah, not a chance.
So there was a Muni Metro train in San Francisco, and the operator either passed out from drugs or alcohol or fell asleep. And as a result, there was no one operating the train, and the passengers were flung about the cabin, with some falling and hitting their heads against the window. And it was a DEI hire who is blaming mechanical failure and not operator error. What's with that?
Unions circling the wagons to protect themselves, but nobody.
More incompetence in public transportation, like more incompetence in everything the government touches.
They do not want to. They do not want to bring back BART since COVID. It's been in the red. In fact, there's another story out about, they call it the fare box. And they're not collecting. People are riding the trains, riding the buses, and not paying the fares, and there's no enforcement.
Hey, when I was a kid and my grandmother and I get on a bus in Long Beach, let me tell you, that driver was watching. Either we had to have our day pass, we had to put the money or the tokens in that thing, and if we didn't, nothing. The bus isn't going anywhere until we did.
Yeah, or you get off.
Yep, or they'll call the police.
But the bus drivers do not enforce that anymore, and there's no other enforcement mechanism. So all of these homeless people and everybody else just ride the bus for free all day long in nice air conditioned comfort, and nobody else can ride it, or anybody else that rides it's got to deal with them, which is not fun.
So we talked earlier in the program, the University of California, San Diego is warning there's a steep decline in the academic preparedness of its freshmen. Imagine that, Scott, if you sit in K through 12 and talk about sexual indoctrination and homosexual indoctrination and teaching kids to be left-wing political activists. There just isn't time for math and science and reading and writing and history and anything that's useful or important.
It kind of goes back to Common Core. I mean, when we adopted Common Core, our standards were already low. We adopted Common Core. What that means is lowest common denominator, and they teach to the dumbest kid in the class, and the other kids are bored silly, and nobody learns anything.
Well, if you put a bunch of people that can't speak English in a class, it's going to dumb down the class and slow it down even more.
Absolutely. And the immigrants are coming in, and they're coming in like in this little Somalia. They're not assimilating. They are basically coming in saying, America was a colonial power that ruined my country. You owe me. And they expect all these freebies, and they don't.
Scott, let's just turn that around. America and Europe civilized a bunch of primitive third world Stone Age people, including the folks. Who were the folks that were cutting out hearts? The Aztecs or whoever down in Mexico.
Yeah, Aztecs.
Yeah, no. Europe and America civilized uncivilized people, and if they don't like it, go home, because we like our civilization just the way it is.
And brought capitalism, raised their standard of living, gave them an opportunity or a structure that they can work and prosper in. Oh yeah, the list goes on. And yet we're looked at as not just us, it's primarily Britain probably, as a colonial power that took their values and rode roughshod over the native.
Right, let's colonize them again. Maybe it'll be good for them. What they're doing now isn't working.
No, it's definitely not. In fact, if anything, the Islamic countries are colonizing Europe.
Well, that's for another program. We have to stop that too, because they're importing a civil war, because Sharia law is not compatible with our Constitution and our way of life. So Scott Lloyd is writing a good question about the need for voter integrity legislation at the federal level, and maybe we can close with that. If we want to win in California, the feds need to get with it here. And they need to have paper ballots, same-day voting, no machines, no mail-in ballots, voter ID. There is a voter ID initiative being circulated right now in California. Maybe we can end on that, Scott.
I think Trump, first of all, we're in a blue state. There's no way in hell it's ever going to happen in the state of California, by the state of California, over California. In fact, when the city of Huntington Beach said, look, we're a charter city, we can run our own elections, we're going to require voter ID for our citizens to vote in our municipal elections, right? None of the state's business, nothing to see here. Our buddy, Attorney General Ron Bonta, filed a lawsuit against the city, got a stay so that they cannot implement it. Although I understand that they're preparing to implement it just in case the court decision goes their way. And they're trying to stop it because Democrats cannot win without cheating. They have to make the rules so that it's easy to cheat, and voter ID would stop a lot of cheating. And I agree with you. We should go back to no mail-in ballots, none. You have to prove that you're going to be out of the country on election day in order to be able to get an absentee ballot. And they should be few and far between. In a state of 40 million, there shouldn't be any more than 1,000, that type of thing. And doing same-day voting instead of 5-day voting or 30-day voting, depending on how you view what we do. And if like Florida, they basically did that. They have voter ID, and they have I don't know about voter ID, but they have
And they're
same day.
able to count their ballots within hours in the whole state. Amazing.
Right. By midnight that night, they have a final vote tally that doesn't change very significantly from that time. And California can't give you much of a tally until 30 days after the election, which, we just had that election in November. Just now, you're starting to get registrars sending in their final and official vote tallies to the Secretary of State. But they're not sending them in yet because theoretically, somebody else, they've counted all the ballots. In fact, I just got an email to this effect today. They've counted all the ballots that were submitted except those that were challenged. So if you had a ballot that was rejected because of a signature that didn't match, or maybe they even forgot to sign it, they put those to the side. They don't count them. And you have, as a voter, an opportunity to come in and rectify that ballot. You can go in there, sign it, and date it appropriately, and then they will count it. Yes, that's my ballot. Yes, I mailed it in. Yes, I intended it to be mailed. Yes, I didn't vote any place else. I want it counted, and they sign it in front of the guy. It matches the signature, and then they'll count it. So it's like, I mean, theoretically, if that thing was sealed on election day and mailed or dropped off or wherever, he voted by election day and he just had a technicality that kept it from being counted and he fixed the technicality. That's the logic that the Dems have. But it's kind of like, screw you. If you're not smart enough to follow the directions, which are pretty simple on a mail in ballot, we shouldn't be counting your ballot. If you can't sign and date it, which is about the only thing you have to do on the backside of that envelope, I don't think you should be counting it. But in California, they do. And so that's the only votes that are left to be counted are those that are being reconciled or rectified. Ridiculous, I know.
All right. So next Thursday is Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And we'll be back Thursday, December 4th in 2 weeks with California Free Radio. In the meantime, Scott, you can watch our show on tape at Net or Mike, or you can watch it at your feed, Scott, which is?
Hey, TaxFighter7 at TaxFighter7. Here, I'll put it on the bottom of the screen for everybody to be able to see. So yeah, spread the word, share it, repost it, get the word out. You can watch it anytime. It stays online forever. And we'd love to have your feedback. Thank you for all those people in the chat today for participating. Here we are, California Free Radio, behind the blue curtain. We haven't given up on the state yet, and we're trying to just get the word out of what's going on and get people motivated to make a change.
Yep, and Billy is on board with same-day paper ballot voting too. Thank you, Billy. All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And
Happy
this is
Thanksgiving.
California Free Radio. I'm Kurt English, and this is Scott Piotr, and Mike Netter is out on assignment, but we'll be back in 2 weeks.
He'll be back, and we've got a good guest coming in, which I can't reveal now, but stay tuned. We'll get the word out.
A secret guest.
Secret